We'll give people one more minute. We're going to start 1 minute late. Make sure who's coming is going to be on. Thanks again for coming. All right, well, let's get started. Well, thank you all for coming to our Expanding Biofield Awareness webinar, free webinar today with Dan Spinner and myself, the Chief Magical Officer of Quantum Touch. So thank you for coming. So I wanted to give you a brief introduction to Dan Spinner. So we've been friends and colleagues for a bunch of years, and I really love working with him. I feel like we're really aligned on many levels. Just a little background. He's an executive and life coach across 3 continents. And he's been the CEO of the Deepak Chopra Foundation and a senior advisor to the Esalen Institute. Here's another fun fact. He has a black belt in Aikido. And for those of you who don't know what Aikido is, it's a Japanese martial art. And Aikido means, I might botch this, but Aikido means way of harmonizing energy from my research. And so clearly Dan has been working with energy for a long time. He has been exploring new concepts in what we're going to talk about today, the biofield and biofield awareness. And we're going to discuss more about what that is and how it relates to our concepts of life force energy. And he's been exploring that, responding to the need to how do we create deeper connections with ourselves, others, the natural world. And so I'm super excited to be talking about this because it's kind of like how in our language for quantum touch, how we take our concepts of life force energy and expand beyond healing. How do we use life force energy for relationships, for money, even real estate, buying and selling homes, and all kinds of different applications. There's so many great applications of how we work with energy. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And yes, I'd like to introduce Dan and go ahead and take it away. We're going to start with a meditation.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'd like to invite you to close your eyes, take a nice couple of deep breaths in your own rhythm. Just be comfortable with your posture if you're not already. And come with me today on a journey to the consciousness of all things. I want you to imagine that you're walking somewhere. Perhaps it's a forest or a beach or a park or somewhere beautiful, somewhere relaxing, someplace you like to be if you're lucky enough to get there. And as you do, I want you to pay attention to what's around you. Perhaps it's a rock on the beach or a tree in the forest or a bird in the sky. Whatever it is, yes, you can appreciate its beauty and you should do that. But perhaps there's more going on than just the beauty of our natural environment. Perhaps if this is one of your favorite places, you feel different. You feel better. Why would that be? We're beginning to learn, as the ancients told us, but we're learning it scientifically, that we all have biofields, we all have energy fields. Not just humans, everything, all beings, all objects. So when you're walking through the forest or on the beach or even in a town, you're encountering the biofields of everything. Maybe you're aware of it depending on your energy skills, maybe you're not. I'm sure you're aware of it when you're energy healing. But it exists even beyond, as Jennifer just said, energy healing. So now feel your way. Just imagine that you can extend your biofield and meet, so to speak, energetically, anything in your environment now. Another person, an animal, an insect, the clouds, the trees, the very ground you're walking on. If you're familiar with the concept of mycelium, right under the very feet, under our very feet, are thousands and thousands of fungal growths that feed the trees, that produce the fruiting we call mushrooms. So even under the ground, there are energy fields reaching up, impacting us, holding us. The biofield of a tree, the energy of a bunny rabbit. Yes, the energy even of a building, and certainly of another human being. So we're surrounded, whether we know it or not, with the energies of all things. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be a problem. It can be amazing. Because just suppose that all things, all beings are conscious. It would be very human of us to think that we're the only conscious ones. In fact, indigenous people say we're the least conscious ones, that the trees and the mountains and the oceans have been here for millennia, and they hold a wisdom and an insight and a knowledge beyond words that we're just beginning to glimpse. So now feel your way into that possibility that not only does everything have an energy field, but that has its own wisdom, its own way of being, its own consciousness, so to speak, its own self-awareness. And you can access that, and you can interact with that if you haven't already in your life. And you can access that to build your own wisdom and your own knowledge and your own consciousness. So take a moment now and just imagine that you're living in this extraordinary planet, in this extraordinary life, where all around you is available wisdom, sensing, touching, feeling through the ether, through our biofields, right through you, into your body. And you can use your body as a tuning fork, as I'm sure you do as an energy healer. You can feel your biofield now and others' biofields. Just let yourself consider the possibility of living in a miraculous world of interwoven biofields. And when you're ready, give thanks, come back into the room, and have a wonderful day. Now, Jennifer, I know you cooked up a bunch of questions to throw at me today.
Yeah, so well, thanks for that meditation. I think that, recognizing that everything's conscious is one of the things that when you start doing energy work, you start to see that we're all one, we're all part of a great global consciousness, great universal consciousness. But I wanted, Dan, can you explain more about the biofield and how it relates to what we call life force energy?
Yes, Jennifer, thanks for that. In my Aikido study over many decades, the Japanese use the same term, life force energy. They call it ki, Ki, or the Chinese call it chi. And the translation of those two Asian languages is exactly that term, life force energy. It's as close as we can get in the English language. So life force energy is not only a concept, of course, deeply embedded in quantum touch, but an ancient concept from at least Asian cultures. And in the last decade in particular, more and more science has come about that has identified this term called the biofield, which was first explained and articulated in the middle of the 1990s in the National Institutes of Health. And really, in a sense, what the phrase the biofield means is the scientific term for our energy fields. And while there's lots of debate and has been over the years about what's an energy field and how does it look and how does it work, there's certainly consensus that there are energy fields. And the ancients have been telling us that for thousands of years, whether it's through the martial arts or meditation or what it might be. So it's at one and the same time, the ancient concept of life force energy, which of course you folks are using in a major way in your healing work, but also a concept that is now being measured by the scientific community. I think that life force energy and ki and chi are the substance that is flowing through our biofield and creating our biofield. So you might think of life force energy as something you're able, with your skills, to direct and participate when you're healing in a healing session with someone, and that's incredible. But it may be much more than just that. That's already amazing. It may be the very substance of the biofield itself. And some science is suggesting that the biofields exist at many levels of scale. For example, there's tremendous research in the past 10 years as well on the energy field of the biofield of the heart itself. We can measure now scientifically. There's a lab from Stanford that's done this, that shows the electromagnetic field of the heart and other energies beyond electromagnetics. So in my understanding of life force energy, in my Keto study, in my understanding of the science of this, and in my own meditative work, you can think of the biofield as the intertwining and waveform evolution and expression of life force.
Yeah, and one of the things that Dan and I were talking about is, I said that our body creates a biofield, but Dan was saying another interesting idea that the biofield creates the body. So I thought maybe you could just dive into that a little more, your perspective on what is this physical form.
Thank you, Jennifer. Certainly our assumption in our culture, but not all cultures, is that we're somehow awareness or consciousness, or at least a personality stuck in this head, looking out through these eyes, and that's kind of who we are. But that's not what the ancients have said for thousands of years, and it's not what the science is saying now. In fact, it may well be, and there's evidence emerging on the scientific scale, not just the spiritual traditions, that the biofield is actually the space that creates and holds all of our functions. And an interesting experience with this a couple of weeks ago, where I was in having some cataract surgery, just getting some new eyes, so to speak. And I did a meditation on that as I was getting ready for surgery. And I thought, well, wait a minute, if biofields exist, and they may exist at many levels of scale, and certainly for the organ of the heart, why wouldn't I have a biofield for my eye? So I went into that meditation, and I found out that I do, in fact, have a biofield for my eye. And then I went from there and went, well, wait a minute. If my eye has a biofield, so do all my other organs. And what the heck is that? And I went into a wonderful meditation in which I felt and sensed and saw all of the biofields of all of my organs working harmoniously together in ways that beyond language, beyond words, that were basically the core function of my human body. So in that moment, what I saw was my human body as the tip of the iceberg of my biofield body, so to speak. Challenges us, right? Gets us thinking, wait a minute, what is the actual nature of reality? One of our famous scientists in this field says the obvious, and you all know this as energy healers, we don't end at our skin. Well, if you don't end at our skin, where do we end? If you don't end at our skin and kind of end somewhere out there, what does that mean? And what is the purpose of this energy field? Right? You use it in healing, and that's incredible. And what we're course discovering in biofield awareness work, as Jennifer implied a few minutes ago, we can use it in many, many other realms, in particular, our relationships.
One thing that I've been tripping on, so we've been told a lot, at least in when I was in school, we've been told that the brain is kind of the epicenter of the human. And so what goes on in the brain dictates what goes on in the body. One of the things that I've been reflecting on is the brain is mostly a receiver rather than the director. So the brain acts like a radio receiver, where you get certain stations depending on how your brain is attuned. So that leaves, like, Dan, what is the origin, do you think, of this life force energy?
Well, that's a deep philosophical and spiritual question, but I'll give you my 2 cents worth, right? So take it with a grain of salt. It's just based on my experience. I think that, there's a lot of neuroscientists that are now saying, to go back to your question about the brain or the comment about the brain, that are saying some very interesting things. I'm thinking of the work of Erwin Laszlo in particular, but lots of others, where neuroscientists have been saying for a number of years, some of them, is there really a reality out there? Is your whole experience what your brain is telling you you're experiencing? In other words, we don't really understand the function of the brain. It certainly isn't just a neural exchange that somehow creates thoughts. It's much more than that. When you start to think about the electromagnetics of the brain and the biochemical cascade of the brain, it does both things. And you start to think of it in vibrational frequency terms rather than just electromechanical neural synapse terms, it starts to change the story. Because in our biofield, we now know that there's a huge exchange of at a minimum, electromagnetic waveforms and wave functions, certainly from our brain and even stronger from our hearts. And new evidence says even more from our guts. Wait a minute, I'm actually an electromagnetic creature stumbling around the planet Earth, and I didn't even know it. I thought it was just me stuffed into this body. So the relationship between the waveforms and the frequency patterns of the energy we're beginning to discover scientifically, and the ancients talked about for thousands of years, life force energy, has many layers of meaning and discovery that seems to be crucial to who we really are, as opposed to just this personality jammed in this body. And if you think about it, you ask that question, well, what is life force energy? It may actually be the substance of all of us. It may be the essence of our very being, so that our bodies and the things that appear elsewhere, trees, rocks, material of reality, are also expressions of life force itself. Now, depending on your own philosophy and what you believe in, you have to decide and sense and feel for yourself, well, where does life force energy come from? Everybody in this call knows that some form of energy life force exists, or you wouldn't be on the call. You have to decide. In my own particular belief system, I think that life force energy is the expression of the universe itself. Now, I said earlier, and I want to go back to that in response to this question, that my experience of biofields is that they intertwine, and they intertwine like spider webs spread across gossamer threads. And so we're not just a biofield even separate on its own. There's trillions upon trillions of biofields in this incredible spider web of life.
So how many people here, just I'm going to take a visual, raise your hand, are familiar with quantum entanglement? Like, raise your hand. Have you heard that term? Let me just take a look here.
Yeah, I'm just going to go. I'm taking a look too. Yeah.
So
half the people, maybe.
Half the people?
Yep, looks like.
Yeah. So what Dan was talking about was if you think about the implications of this, quantum entanglement is the idea that we're all connected, like there's no separation, including objects, including all of the universe, trees, everything. And so that means that what you're thinking right now has impact instantaneously across the whole universe, like what you're projecting into the world. We have a product called a pendant where we use quantum entanglement to entangle them all and charge them, because we've seen this in action where this is how distant healing works. Has anyone here like done distant healing or have worked with distant healing? I'm going to take another visual here. Raise your hand. Has anyone wondered, why does it work? I mean, it seems kind of a little bit crazy that, you can hold someone in your heart, you can imagine somebody, and it affects them 3,000 miles away, 5,000 miles away. It doesn't really matter. The distance doesn't matter. Has anyone ever like wondered, how that works and why? Yeah, so basically, so what Dan was just saying, the idea that everything's conscious that everything's entangled, that we're all part of this like cosmic soup of energy. That means that our biofields are constantly interacting with everything all over the world, with all the trees everywhere, you know, that you focus your consciousness on. And it's a little bit of a mystery, but what I wanted to get into is this mystery of consciousness, conscious entanglement, the idea that everything's conscious, how this can really change. It's what we call in quantum touch the new paradigm of reality. The idea that we're not just little separate creatures living our own lives with no impact on anything, and that we're materialistic or controlled by chemicals or any of that, that we're more like these conscious, what I would call spiritual beings that are interconnected from a distance, close up, everywhere, even your pets, your trees, your car. We've had stories of quantum touch where you can charge batteries. Now that's odd, but we've had a lot of stories where people were recharging their phones using energy. So what I wanted to get into was how we can use these biofields, our biofields and our interconnectionists in like real life, other applications. And Dan has some pretty amazing stories around real estate and relationship and business and money. And I thought it'd be really fun to hear, you know, some of the stories. So if you wanted to talk more about, you know, how do we apply all this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just to build for a moment on what Jennifer just said, you know, quantum physicists are blowing apart the definitions of reality. Every day, every year, every month, they're discovering so many things at the smallest scale. That's what quantum research is in physics, but also astronomical. And so we're finding so many things in the scientific realm that they're just taking our sort of simplified human version of stories and just blowing it apart about what is reality and what are we really. And what Jennifer was just describing is what some people call the quantum field, right? That there's a field of reality that we're mostly ignorant of and unaware of as human beings. But of course, as healers, you know there's something else. Remote healing, the work you may do face to face, we know there's something else, and some of us can exercise that and use talents and develop it. And Jennifer's giving you a framework that suggests about there's now science starting to back up that intuitive knowledge some of us had, you know, during our lives, or the ancients have been talking about. The application of biofield awareness is turning out to be, as we've been experimenting with this in the past few years, quite substantial. It's what I like to say, simple but potent. So I'll give you some examples because Jennifer's asked me to. I'm sitting in a beautiful home, 11 acres of rainforest in British Columbia, Canada. I'm looking right now at the ocean and the mountains, and it's a passive solar home. But I didn't find this home. This home found me. My wife and I, using our energetic skills and our awareness of these sort of quantum discussions, created a vision board in which we describe not our perfect home, but not in terms of what it would look or what it would cost or where it would be, nothing like that, just the essence of it. It would be peaceful, it would be surrounded by nature, it would enhance our world service, just few or 5, 6 little qualities. Luckily, my wife and I were totally aligned on those things. And we put that on our vision board because what I've learned over the years is if you say the essence of something and you intend it clearly, that's when the planet and the universe responds. But if you go the other way in some of the other manifesting techniques, where you want a house that looks like this and costs this much, and people in your life that do this and that, it's really hard for the universe to respond to those specificities. But if you're clear about what your heart's desire is, not for your ego, but for your world service, the universe responds. So the house we now have, and found easily and was way below market value, et cetera, we weren't even looking at the time, exceeded any expectations we could have ever had in terms of how it's constructed, the views, the forest around us. It's just incredible. I never would have even imagined anything this way. But that work was leaning into the quantum field and inviting the planet and the universe to assist me and to understand, for me to remember something I sometimes forget, well, we all need to remember, we live in a co-creative universe. And I just simply want to end that example by saying, if I have a biofield and you have a biofield, and trees and other things have biofields, then the earth has her own biofield. And imagine what that means for collaborating with the earth and all the challenges we're facing these days, but also in terms of manifesting. So manifesting this way is not designed to feed the ego, right? But it can drop you into living a more abundant life. And Jennifer's going to have something to say about that in a minute.
Well, I also want to share a story because sometimes the answer is no. Like the highest good is not a yes, even though you think that's what you wanted. And I have a real estate example. As many of you may know, I built a house in Asheville, North Carolina, starting in 2019. And I visited the house, sat in the house when it was halfway constructed, and the house spoke to me. The partially constructed house had a message. The house said, "This is not your house. You do not belong here. You're going to have to sell this house." And sometimes we don't hear what we want to hear. And sometimes the manifestation isn't really a yes. And I resisted it, even up to the point where, the house got done. It was beautiful. It looked like, fixer-upper HGTV. It was just gorgeous. Had a $2,000 chandelier. I mean, it was just gorgeous. And the universe said, you have to sell the house. This isn't your highest good. This isn't your path. And I put the house on the market and I way overpriced it because I didn't really want to sell it. So I put it on the market for 1.5 million. Of course it didn't sell. But the universe said, no, you got to price it right to sell it. So my resistance was right up to the last minute. I finally sold the house. But sometimes that biofield can talk to us and it may say something we really don't want to hear, but everything talks to us and we get messages all the time. And I had to share that story because sometimes the answer is no, it's not for your highest good. And I know it's frustrating sometimes because things we want that may come from more of ego, not necessarily our true service, or may come from just not the right path. The universe is really powerful. It really co-conspired to make sure that I didn't keep that house, even though, I was swimming uphill. Sometimes we can use force and do things not in the highest good, despite all the messages around us telling us no. But what I've learned is it usually ends up in ash. Just doesn't really work. How many people have had that experience? They try to force something to happen and maybe it's not in the highest good and just didn't work out like they thought.
Yeah, there's a bunch of hands going up.
Bunch of hands, right?
Me too. It's a great example, Jennifer. Thank you so much for that, because think about what happened for Jennifer. Whether she had the language or not, she was sensing the biofield of the house. This is an object. Stone, wood, glass. How could that be? I'm submitting to you that everything has a biofield and everything is alive in that sense. And Jennifer had enough skill set and intentionality to sit there and just feel what that truth was. And of course, we're human, and there's a truth that emerges or guidance that emerges that we don't like at the personality level. We often do resist it or ignore it, right? Or fight it. I'll give you another simple example of that. Dating. I'm sure you've all had this experience, but I'm going to ask you, you may or not want to show your hands. You ever had a moment where you met somebody and you were in dating time in your life and the energy was just wrong and you ignored that? And so you pursued that relationship and it really didn't go very well. I've certainly done that. Anybody else want to confess that you've had that experience where you ignored your guidance? Yeah, there's some hands going up. And it's okay because we're learning, right? We're trying to learn. We're not trying to make fun of ourselves or put ourselves down, right? An alternative, you can get an energy hit to pursue a relationship with someone who might not be your type. you weren't thinking of, or maybe you weren't ready, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe that's the love of your life. That's certainly what happened to me in my successful 32-year marriage. So energy is applicable way beyond just the healing modality in our real estate, in our relationships, et cetera. And if we ignore that, we're just not using our skills and expanding them the way that we can. And of course, what's the point of biofield awareness? It's to be able to navigate through life more harmoniously, right? Whether it's relative to your money, your financial status, relative to your relationships or your home or your health or anything else, it's about navigation and creating harmony. And the way I like to say it is, wait a minute, I have a biofield, you have a biofield, none of us know it, or we're not paying attention to it. So we're all caught up and messed up in entangled biofields that we can't make any sense of, right? And then it's like, well, okay, well, one of the first steps in biofield awareness is to learn boundaries, energetic boundaries. So you know what is yours and what is somebody else's. And I'm sure as healers, you have your own version of that, but it applies to all of life. It applies to the plumber that came in the other day and was working on renovating my bathroom, and he was having some health issues, and he just come from an x-ray. And so I just said, well, how are you doing? And so we had a whole conversation about his health because that's what was on his mind. I think he's going to do a better job in my bathroom because I paid attention to what was really going on for him beyond his skill set, right, about his own health, because I'd heard he had some problems. So it's like, well, look, you can ignore the energy fields of everybody else if you want, and even your own, but it just makes life harder. And maybe I'm just a sucker, but I like life to be as fulfilling and as joyous as possible using these kinds of navigational skills. I'll give you another example. So when I met my wife, I was working in a hospital, and so was she. And she was a researcher, and I was an executive. And we were sitting in a cafeteria where a bunch of us went over to the cafeteria for, coffee break or lunch because we were in a different building. And one day it was just her and I. It used to be a crowd of us. So we were just colleagues. And we're sitting there. Now, hospital cafeteria is the least romantic place in the universe. Antiseptic smells, codes are being called for heart attacks, babies are crying, people are stressed because of their health or their relatives' health. Maybe the only happy people in the room people are going to have babies, but they're stressed too. Okay, so it's just not a romantic environment. Sitting there in this non-romantic environment, suddenly some energy came over me. And I said to my then colleague and now 30-year spouse, I think I know who you really are. She said, what did you say? And I said, oh, and it came out of my mouth. I said it again. And she said she knew in that moment that we would be together. So some energy flowed through me beyond the personality. We're just colleagues and we're sitting in a hospital that had some deeper wisdom and knowledge, and it snuck out past my lips in spite of myself, because I really said to myself, well, what are you doing? And it's turned out to be an incredible marriage and relationship. So sometimes these things happen, and I'm sure you all have your own examples of that, but we're inviting you through Biofield Awareness to pay attention to it, to learn about it. Biofield Awareness is a new practice. And that's what our class is about coming up on October 7th. And Jennifer's going to put in the chat the link that you can do. And it's also an affiliate agreement so that any of you that come in to the class, some funds flow back to Quantum Touch, which is a way of being abundant. Thank you, Jennifer, for all her support to what we do. It's a new practice that's very simple and deceptively simple, but can really help us in not only navigating, but in manifesting. And Jennifer, I wondered if you wanted to comment on the work you and I have been doing on what we're now calling Biofield Abundance.
Yes, since we have the time, I have one more thing I wanted to share about Biofield Awareness.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about that. So how many here do energy healing sessions, actual do healing work? Because this goes actually back to healing work. And get another show of hands here. So we got a few people. I had a client once that came to me with breast cancer. This kind of speaks to some of the questions I try to figure out, like why aren't people getting better? Sometimes we send all this love and this healing work, and people we're not really seeing the results we want to see. And I had a client who came to me with breast cancer. She wasn't really seeing the results, and the biofield of the experience of me doing healing work on her spoke to me. And the field said she's not getting better because she's in a relationship she needs to leave. And that was it. And the energy came through. As a practitioner, that was a long time ago. I did not have the courage to speak what the biofield was saying to me and the client. And so I just did the healing work on her, and there was no improvement. We did 10 sessions. There was no progress really. I wish if I could go back in time speaking through what the biofield said, because I think when things that we have health challenges or our clients have health challenges and we're just not seeing an improvement, I believe the message is there as to why. It's just the courage of being able to embrace the message for your client or to embrace the message for yourself, because usually the change you need to make is super hard. It may mean changing relationship, changing environment, giving up, a substance, all these things we don't want to do, but the biofield is constantly, the universal biofield is constantly bombarding us with, what needs to change for our full healing. And I found that really interesting because I just, it's funny that we get the messages and sometimes we don't really have the courage to act on them. And I just, sometimes I still do that. I get the message and I just don't always act on it. So, but one of the things that
Jennifer, just before you go to abundance, that's a great example. And what I would say to everyone to help you understand what Jennifer's getting at is that life force energy, or the flow of energy in the biofield, puts a spotlight on truth. It just shows the truth, whether you're ready to see it or not ready to see it, or whether you act on it or not. It just shows truth, whether it's a difficult or easy truth, or happy or a sad truth. And that's what Jennifer's being honest about and vulnerable and admitting. And I thank you for that, Jennifer.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to explore Dan's work with all today because I really believe it's valuable for us to become more aware of how our biofield interacts with the universe, nature, our planet's pretty much out of balance. I think we're not really in tune with nature anymore as a species. So I wanted to bring awareness to that. Dan is teaching a course on this, like how can we get more vulnerable with our biofield? How can we feel our biofield? How can we expand our biofield awareness? And I just love promoting his work. So I wanted to give you guys all a link for his upcoming course on expanding biofield awareness so that you guys can use and receive and use the energy to receive these types of messages from the universe. And it can really, it has enhanced my life. It's also brought up a lot of truth that sometimes hard to face, but being more aware of the biofield and the messages has been super beneficial. And that's why I'm wanting to have this call with Dan. I thought maybe you could talk a little bit more about that expanding biofield awareness coming up.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, it's October 7th, so we're getting close to our start date. Look, biofield awareness is not for everybody out there in the public because it's potent. It's for people that are ready to expand their energy skills, have done enough work on themselves that they're intrigued and interested to learn how to do that. And it's the early days. We've only been doing this particular work for a couple of years, so we're still learning as we go. So if you're an innovator and you're an early adopter and you're curious about this, this might be something that will really help you. There's one or two people on this call actually that have taken a couple of my classes. I keep being surprised by the strength of the work because I don't pretend that I know everything about biofield awareness. It's just channeling through me. It's coming through me, through my relationship with the trees. I've been talking to trees since I was a young child, through my Aikido work, etc. But what we're learning is people can get it and get it very quickly. There's gentle movements in the class coming from my Aikido background. They're not, you can do them sitting down or standing up. Anybody of any age can do them. We'll do some more journeys. We'll have some dialogue. We'll have some readings and some poems. It's not just a talk at you or think thing. It's an experiential thing. And we're, if depending on the number of people in the group, we may go into small groups as well in breakout rooms. It's a lot of fun. We get a lot of good feedback from it. And of course, what I'm most excited to hear from the people who are studying this with me and my colleagues is that they apply it. They take it into some part of their life, whether it's business or relationships or parenting, whatever it might be. Just a comment on that, I've been doing a 2-year experiment with a family using biofield methods and techniques, biofield awareness, and it's dramatically changed their relationships with one another. And that's way beyond anything I imagined. And we're doing another experiment with a business in Los Angeles. And that business had some truths that needed to emerge, and they did, and they were difficult. But as a result of that, the founder moved out of the CEO role, and new CEO is in place, and they're about to thrive again. And so the application of this can be very practical if you let it be, and if you go into this with the only attitude I invite you to is let's have some fun and let's explore together what are going to be very natural skills for you once you start to get them.
Yeah, and we had a question about if you can't make the October 7th, will be available for recorded sessions.
Yes, yes, and even the October 7th, which is live, even if you can't make every session, which is Saturday morning Pacific time, 10 to 11:30, they'll be recorded too. So some people did kind of half and half of the lives, half of the recordings, and we will have a full recording of the session all 6 weeks. It's a 6-week program to November 11th that we will make available once we've edited it and cleaned it up afterwards. In which case I would invite you to subscribe on our website so we know you're interested and express your interest in the recorded session, and we'll make sure we get it out to you.
Great. Yeah, and I wanted to share something that got me really excited because I've been doing a quantum touch. I've been involved in quantum touch 21 years now. And I got into it with the healing work. And then I started, as Dan, as we're exploring today, how do you use this energy for other things? And one of the things that has been like a lifelong struggle for me, I had a background where I grew up where there was poverty consciousness. And it really went into my adult life, this nature of always struggling with money and never enough, constant scarcity. Can anyone relate to that? Is anyone feeling like the money thing is just really tough for you guys? Just raise your hand. Don't be shy.
Yeah, we're not taking notes. It's okay.
We're not taking notes. Yeah. So I ended up with I like I had $100,000 in debt. Does anyone here have a mass amount of debt they feel just burdened by? Okay, well, I had over $100,000 in debt, no savings, no money, and it was that's really stressful. That's a really stressful situation. And as in life, the universe thought this was not my highest good to have this much debt, and the universe started bombarding me with messages about, I need to clean this up. And like always, I was resistant to the messages from the universe because they meant I might have to modify my lifestyle. The Amazon package was arriving every day and was really enjoying all the new clothes and everything else I was buying. I had a new car, I had, all the cool things. And the universe is like, this isn't in your highest good. Debt is a burden. It's a drag, coefficient to your highest good. So you got to get out of debt and saving money. And with a lot of and I don't know if you've all noticed when the universe starts sending you a message, the message doesn't get softer, it gets louder. So the universal biofield was constantly bombarding me with the notion of fixing my finances. I finally started to follow the universe's guidance and started, it'll guide you step by step. And I ended up paying off all my debt and saving a bunch of money and not really feeling this wasn't that painful either. And my income didn't go up at all. It actually went down a little bit. It was just the way I managed my life and myself. And it was really an interesting learning experience. I had a lot of ego tied up in what I was spending money on. I was like spending money for other things other than what I needed, just because I had like appearance, these notions about other people cared. What do other people think? So it's a healing process. So generally, our messages from our biofield, from the universal biofield, like is actually for our highest good and our healing. And it also has like real world positive effects, and that's why I found it so valuable. And Dan and I are going to do a course on biofield abundance. Like, how do we work with the biofield to actually turn around our financial situation? And I'm going to be co-teaching that with Dan, because I'm just really excited about the idea of our whole community using biofield awareness to like completely change their financial situation around. It's been a major stress point, and I would love people to get out of that financial stress as soon as you can. And I don't know if Dan, you wanted to offer more info on that.
Thank you, Jennifer. And by the way, I sort of misspoke myself on recordings. Yes, if you want the recordings only, you can sign up and we'll send them to you weekly, a couple of days after we've done them. And that's in chat. I'm really excited to be doing this work with Jennifer because it's the first time we'll co-teach together. Because one of the things that's Jennifer brings to this is her honesty and her vulnerability about what she's learning. It's a great example for people. All of us, most of us, I think, struggle sometime with our own abundance. I certainly have over the years, and our own scarcity mentality compared to living in this abundant universe that we know exists, sometimes seems difficult to access. And particularly for energy healers in the angel world, it's hard to, it's hard maybe sometimes to market, and it's hard sometimes to open up to the abundance of the universe. And there's a whole bunch of myths that we have about money that Jennifer will be going through. We think this whole course is going to become a book eventually, by the way. And for me, I had to kind of look back at my life, and I live a pretty abundant life these days. I had to look back at, well, how did I do that? What happened? And I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars for charities and businesses, and I've gone from extreme poverty to a reasonably abundant life. And I had to understand that I understood money as energy. And now I know, years later, most people don't. They think of it as evil or bad or wrong or something. And of course, it isn't. The Bible didn't say that money was evil. It says the love of money was evil, right? And it's the greed and fear we pour into the idea of money that makes it evil. And of course, in our culture, we have many people who do use it for evil purposes in their own aggrandizement. And so there's a whole bad story about the use of money, but that doesn't make it bad. It's just the use of money and the understanding of money. I had a fascinating conversation, Zoom call earlier this morning with a number of indigenous leaders from around North America. And they were explaining to me that their elders are energy sensitive, but in poverty. And they don't know how to use their energy at all relative to their poverty. And they have so many things they want to teach the rest of their communities and the world that they're really struggling and suffering with their health, with their living conditions, et cetera. So we're going to be in a whole program, Jennifer. I told you might be getting involved in this with indigenous leaders about helping them learn how to use their energy sensitivities to become more abundant. So there's an obvious, maybe a more extreme example of it. But I invite you all to think about it. Think about the areas of your life where maybe you're abundant, maybe you have good relationships, maybe you have a nice home, and other areas of your life where maybe you're not so abundant. Maybe it's money, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's children or siblings, who knows? Think about it. And just be honest with yourself. Where do things work well for you in high flow, and where do they not? And it's going to come down to, and the indigenous leader I was talking to this morning, one of them pegged it. Oh, Dan, you're telling us that the first step in opening up more abundance in our life is to increase the flow within our own being. And I said, so you've got it exactly right. It's not stuff you have to do out there to manipulate the universe to give you more money or better relationships or whatever. It's stuff we can do to learn to open up the flow in our very own cellular structure, including opening ourselves to receive. So there's a whole bunch of work to be done, but it's fun and it's interesting in Biofield Awareness. And Jennifer and I are going to take that. I think we're going to do this class probably in March of 2024, and we're calling it Biofield Abundance. And I wonder, Jennifer, we just want to open it up for any more questions or comments.
If you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'll look around, and or you can put it in the chat, and or comments, or yeah.
I guess there's a hand from Kathy.
Okay, let's see if you can unmute here.
Hi.
Okay, hi Kathy.
Hi, Jennifer. I have to be really basic. I mean, when you think in terms of what in your life would you like to see changed or improved, and I can understand every angle you're talking about, but if you wanted to reduce it strictly to, let's say, health issues, what is it about the biofield awareness that directs it to precisely what you're interested in? I mean, in quantum healing, quantum touch, you've got a focus, you've got an idea, and you concentrate on it. Is there that sort of a process with this, or is it just becoming aware of your own electrical field and things just happen?
No, there's a process for this. It's certainly that general awareness is there. And it is a matter of focus, Kathy, which you're implying. What we're finding is if it's true, and it seems to be that biofields exist at every scale of reality, you get to choose which scale is going to be helpful, in this case, to your healing. All right. So when I was about to go under the surgeon's knife, although it was just cataract surgery, it's still a surgery, right? I was working with energy and guidance to let my energy be there for my eye that was being operated on, but I was also surrounding the surgeon without him knowing it with good energy and focus, et cetera, and even to his fingertips. And I had him describe to me everything he was doing as he was doing the surgery so that I could flow and watch and be part of the energy with it. So focusing and decisions on scale become an important part of biofield awareness and indeed biofield abundance.
And that's part of this course?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question.
I wanted to add that sometimes the universe gets your attention with stuff. You know, I don't know if Danny, you've noticed that. And then sometimes you ask the question, but sometimes the answers come whether or not you were seeking that answer or not, especially with some major things. Like, for example, my house in North Carolina, letting that go, that I wasn't asking, should I keep this house? Because the answer obviously was yes, I should keep the house. But the universe was saying, no, it had to provide direction without me really seeking it out. But sometimes we ask direction. Like recently I asked the universe, I want to grow quantum touch. Can you show me the next steps? Because, you know, quantum touch is its own biofield. And the answers showed up in showing me everything that is not working first. So sometimes you have to clear out stuff that's not working to get into what does work. And sometimes when we ask, we're seeing, okay, you gotta change this, you gotta fix this problem, you gotta fix this website issue. You get the answers if you direct a question a certain direction, or sometimes stuff just shows up. That's what I've noticed as far as a process.
Yeah, I want to comment on that. I think it shows up for a reason, right? There's no accidents, right? There's no randomness in my view of the world. And so we learn as we become more and more energetically skilled, when something shows up, particularly if it's surprising or not desirable, to pay attention to it rather than ignore it. Because Jennifer's right, at least in my experience. If the universe or the planet's whispering at you and you're not listening, she starts shouting, right? And that's just more difficult later on. So the more sensitive and aware we become, the easier it is to get on with whatever it is the work is required for our own health, healing, and for our own lives. Other questions or comments? There's a few in chat, and I've answered a few of them there. Somebody asked about, there is on your YouTube channel, Jennifer, there's a 1-hour webinar you and I did. So people can look up the Quantum Touch YouTube channel and Biofield Awareness, and you'll see that. And I'm in the middle of writing a trilogy. The second book was just published First one was Wake Up Curious. The second one was Wake Up Connected. So on Amazon, and I'm working on a third book, which is coming out probably next year, which will be Wake Up in Community. And in Wake Up Connected, I tell some of the story of how I kind of stumbled into some of these things. And you might enjoy it because I fess up a lot of autobiographical messes and things I sorted out. But I also bring some of the science in as it's merging. There's lots of links to some of the science if that interests you as well. Another way to think about Biofield Awareness is reminding you, and I said this earlier, but I'd like to emphasize it. I don't believe that I can teach you anything. I don't believe I need to teach you anything. I believe that my job is to facilitate and catalyze your remembering who you really are and the depth and wisdom of your own being. It's another thing that I know that you don't know somewhere in your consciousness. And depending on the work on yourself and your life path, you may or may not have accessed a lot or a little bit. You obviously have accessed a lot of it to be here. And Biofield Awareness is designed to bring out even more. I love those moments when somebody says, oh, that feels familiar. I think I knew that, that distant memory sort of feeling. So I take the basis that you are all extraordinary, unbelievable human beings who have incredible wisdom that may or may not be a little bit or a lot buried in your own story about yourself and your story about your life. And part of my job and Jennifer's job is to catalyze that so that memory comes back, so that realization becomes alive. You can live more and more fully, meaningful and contented lives, and therefore more impact on those you work with as well. I hope that makes some sense to you. There's the webinar. Jennifer's put that in the chat. A couple more minutes left. Any other final comments or questions? I hope this makes some sense to you. It's new. It's different. And Nancy Ann's here. Nancy Ann, would you've taken this class with me. You're taking the next one. Would you like to say anything? And maybe you can unmute Nancy Ann, Jennifer.
Yeah, I did.
There we go. Nancy, any quick comment? We just got a minute or two.
Yeah, so this quantum touch thing, this deeper awareness thing is so buried when we live a busy life. So when we pause and find our own way of dropping deep inside, we start connecting some of these dots we've been talking about. So when Dan does his meditations, it's one meditation that touches energetically on many things. So whoever is listening will be touched in whatever dots are trying to connect within their own being. What's next to connect in their own unfolding. That's how I experience it in myself and with people I work with as well.
Thank you, Nancy, and I appreciate that and your participation as well. Jennifer, any final comments?
Yeah, I have one final comment. I ultimately believe, everyone has different beliefs, but I ultimately believe the reason why we're incarnate in a body is spiritual growth, our own evolution and collective evolution. And that's ultimately why the universe behaves as it does. It's here to grow and evolve. And so that's why we get these messages, or that's why we seek out these messages. That's why we have these problems and challenges. It's like the universe prompting us to grow. And the biofield awareness, being aware of the messages that the universe is always trying to give you, can really maximize your growth and your ability to open your heart and love. Because a lot of what the universe is trying to get you to do is to open that heart and let go of a lot of the ego stuff that we get wrapped up in, like, what do other people think? Which was part of the heart of my financial problems. So anyways, that's why I love, quantum touch, and I love the biofield work, is because we can't take anything with us other than our own growth and love. And so that's why I'm so passionate about all of this stuff. So I really appreciate you joining us today, and thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll be sending you Light and Energy. We'll also be sending you the recording. And if you're inclined and moved to be called to join us on October 7th, that'd be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.